And so Project Porchlight is staffed by HUD certified housing counselors who specialize in disaster recovery. They've had about 160 hours of disaster specific education, and most of the team, because of Harvey, unfortunately, most of the team themselves have had to recover from a natural disaster. So they have that wealth of experience. And so Project Porchlight is a program where a client works with a disaster coach who takes stock of where they are in their situation. So we walk through, what are the steps they've already taken? What are the things that they need to do outstanding? What are their priorities and their needs and their current financial situation? And where are they trying to go in their recovery? So really understanding what's the point where they feel they have recovered. What was their financial normal before this? We create a plan, a long-term plan with that consumer with really specific goals and milestones and things that they need to achieve over time so that they can meet that recovery goal. And we then stick with that consumer and provide ongoing coaching and ongoing check-ins with them at least once a month, sometimes more frequently, to make sure that they're hitting those goals. Our service is absolutely free. We have really generous support from some community partners and foundations. Fannie Mae helps cover quite a few of our costs for this, but it is free to the community. It is free to consumers to come to us. So it is really easy for consumers to reach us for Project Porchlight. We have a special number just for folks who are struggling to recover from the Almeda Fire. People can call us at 877-565-5492. We are 24/7, so they can call anytime, day or night, and they will reach us. A human answers that phone. We offer service in both English and in Spanish. We also offer translation services for about 185 other languages. So if they're whatever language the consumer prefers to talk about their finances in, we're able to accommodate that. We don't put any limits on how long someone can work with us. Our goal is to work with them until their recovery is finished. What I can say is that most people around the 18th month is about as long as most people go. By the time we get to the 18-month mark, they're feeling pretty good about their situation. They feel like they're back in control. They feel like they can kind of take that and keep going, but we don't put any limits on it. We also don't put any limits on when that disaster had to have happened. So if someone comes to us today and says that they were impacted by Hurricane Katrina back in, I think it was 2005, 6, that's fine. We can work with them through the recovery or through whatever remains of their recovery. So there's no time limits on how long they spend with us or when the disaster needs to have happened. I will say, unfortunately, we see this quite a bit. The folks who are at highest risk and the folks who are most kind of disadvantaged in getting services from day to day are the folks that really struggle the most through a recovery. So we provide service regardless of someone's citizenship status or their documentation status. At the end of the day, the basics of disaster recovery, while there may be some things that they can't apply for, some grants that won't accept applications from undocumented individuals or from people who aren't citizens. The nuts and bolts of, we need to make a plan to recover from this disaster. We need to understand what your goals are. We need to stick with this long term and continue to check in. That all is really the same. If they have insurance, then we still help them work with that insurance company, help them understand, your homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance is not the same as your car insurance, right? It's a very different experience working through that. And we, have a lot of experience working with people who are unbanked and not just helping them recover from a disaster, but helping them get banked, since that really is key to their future. But, making sure that we have folks who are in safe, stable, and affordable housing that is long-term and not just temporary housing recovery is really key and specifically important for that population, since it can be a real struggle. really the next thing, and I touched on it a minute ago, that people really encounter is this grief and trauma that they encounter during a disaster. Um, you know, one of the challenges that we hear is that folks, if you are fortunate enough to have never been through an incredibly traumatic event, then that is fantastic. But unfortunately, if you've been through a traumatic event before, you know how intrusive it can become and how hard it can be just to get through day after day and do the most basic things to keep your life moving, right? And so very frequently what we hear from consumers, especially who were involved in a fire in particular, is that the applications that were available initially and the decisions that they were making immediately in the aftermath of the fire are not the decisions or choices that they would have made if they had had a little bit more time, because that trauma and that fear of a second fire, that if they had an evacuation where they had to go very quickly, if they left home one morning and during work the home was lost, that is an incredibly tough thing. And so one of the things our counselors are trained on specifically is really trauma-informed counseling. And so we're helping people make decisions that are not just decisions for that moment, but are decisions that they can live with over the long term.